Morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. It's a time of year where we get to act like Christians and nobody really picks on us because everybody's being nice. So this is your opportunity to get out there and talk because they expect it. From now through Christmas, you can witness and get away with it, and people won't think you're crazy. You're just being nice. So get out there and do your job. Okay, we finished our meal up. As typical with Thanksgiving, ate too much, keeping in mind that we were told that there are children in Africa that would love a quarter of what we had, and that would probably be how much they'd get for the week. And unfortunately, it's true, a lot of it. When I was younger, I sponsored I forget the organization, a child over there. Eventually, he got old enough that dropped off the list, and I've never been able to figure out where he is. So, at any point, it's the holiday season, and we need to be joyous about that if we're not joyous about God in itself. Add the two, and you can really be happy. Okay. When we look around and we keep talking about this, we keep seeing all kinds of things happening. And we're thinking, well, this is normal. It happens all the time. No. Everything that we see has happened to some degree or another. But we're seeing birth pains now, which means that everything we're seeing is getting bigger, faster, harder, whatever. And so we're definitely in the end times. Jesus warned us about birth pains, and we're going to look at Matthew 24 again. You kind of keep going in circles because there's not a whole lot you can do, but just keep looking and keep seeing things happening. So we're going to read out of Matthew 24, starting in verse 6. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not troubled. We have a war going on right now in Israel. And Matthew's talking about Israel whenever he's talking about anything. He may specifically mention the world at times, but in general, he's talking to Jews just right after a Sabbath get-together. He's talking to them about what's going to happen to them. See that you're not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. What is the end? Him coming back. He doesn't talk about the rapture. He's talking about his second coming when he gets to that. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Some of the translations will have it a little bit more precise. It's ethnos against ethnos, which means the Jews fighting the Muslims, the Arabs. Again, it's talking about them. And there shall be famines, and we've seen them, over time throughout the world. Pestilences, we just got rid of a big one, and they're talking about another one again. I don't think they're going to get people to lockstep this time, because they used up all their freebies on the last one. And earthquakes in diverse places. We'll talk about that in a bit. I just want to talk about, I got 5 things down here that I want to talk about that kind of point to us, if we look at it, that we're getting close. Continuing on, 24:8. And these are the beginning of sorrows. The birth pains, as that's a way of them talking about it, because they couldn't talk about things like that. In verse 9, then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and they shall kill you, and you shall be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Again, he's talking to the Jews about Jews. Are they hated? Look at how much they're rioting around the world. They are definitely hated. Now, again, it's spurred on but they're following in goose step right along with it. They don't have to follow them. They don't have to say, well, I'm not going to follow you in this hatred event of yours, but they do. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. That's what's going on today. Big time. Now, it's happened before, but when you compare it with everything else that's going on, you see that you got to basically look at the whole Bible when you're doing things. You can't pull one scripture out, one verse out, and say, here, this proves the point. You got to get a bunch of them and pull them together. We just had today, or last night sometime, the largest volcanic blast of the year. I think it was at Papua New Guinea. And the debris from the volcano went up over 60,000 feet. It's definitely a flying hazard. And there's been other volcanoes. We saw one in Iceland where it was cracking the streets. What's going on? We're getting a lot more bigger earthquakes. There was just 2 or 3 sevens around the world in the last day. It's not the biggest one we've had. The biggest one we had this year was it the Turkey one? Yeah, the Turkey one was 7.8. But there's been some 7s and 7.1s just recently. So things are increasing. I looked it up, and as of October 2023, there were 46 volcanoes in continued eruption status, as it used the term. An eruption marked as continuing does not always mean persistent daily activity, but indicates at least intermittent eruption events without a break of 3 months. So that's what they're talking about. So there's 46 of them in October, and we just had another one. So things are getting to where they're going to start shaking more. So we had 7.8 in Western Turkey. We had a 7.7 in New Caledonia. It was a smaller earthquake in, for last year we got 7.6 in Papua New Guinea, and I don't know how you say this. Mikakan? I don't know. The Fukushima earthquake was 7.4 in 2022. So we're slowly increasing. And as we get closer, the speed increases. Let's take a look at some of the things that we're doing now in space. The scientists have said that Saturn is losing its rings. Now, it may take a time to do that, to actually physically lose them, but there is something called ring rain. Not the ring race of Lord of the Rings, but ring rain, where the particles that are in the ring are falling into the planet, falling into the planet. And most of them are burning up. A lot of the rings are made up of ice. Probably remnants of asteroids or whatever else that were out there. But they literally are losing their rings. I think it was 1610, Galilei, with one of his early telescopes, spotted the rings. And because it was such a minute thing, it was, even with the telescope, it wasn't very clear. He said it looked like it had ears. I guess that probably brought some laughter to the scientists. And in 2025, the rings won't be gone, but they will virtually disappear as the rings become directly horizontal. He says it's like looking at a sheet of paper over 100 yards away, it'd be difficult to see. The biggest telescopes will spot it, but it will be difficult to see. So it's going to look like in 2025 that the planet has no rings. They are disappearing, but that's not that fast. Okay, we're closer to sending man back into planetary space. There's plans to take over the moon again, build a moon base. It's going to be dangerous, so they're going to have to make sure they've taken care of the habitat. Even though it always looks at the part of the moon that we see, always looks at the Earth, there are times that it's open for radiation. Looking at the Earth doesn't mean that it's not looking at the sun. We see the sun reflecting on it, so the sun is hitting it. You watch your old vampire movies, and they couldn't come out during the daylight, but they could come out when there's moonlight. I guess nobody told these writers that the light reflecting off the moon is sunlight. Okay. So, are you amazed as I am at how fast Elon Musk has been able to develop the projects that he's on? I will upload this using SpaceX here in a little bit. It's not as fast as a landline yet, but it's getting there. And he's still launching satellites without major failures. There's a few that have had a problem, but in general, he's been able to have successful launches where he's landing like they did in science fiction movies. NASA never even contemplated that. Where it turns around and comes and lands, and it's reusable. And he's going to do that with his big rocket. They haven't got there yet. He's working on the launch first. He's had 2 partial successful tests. The first one, it cleared the launch pad, which was something that we hadn't really seen before for something that big. It's 400 feet tall when they're both attached. And it had to be blown up because they didn't detach properly. So we went back to the drawing book and know that Russia has been using hot linkage for a long time. In other words, the second stage actually lights before it's disconnected from the first stage, and it pushes itself away, as opposed to just hoping things break loose and you open all the clamps and everything goes their separate ways. There's still momentum going. And both bodies, both the lower rocket and the capsule up above, have the same momentum when they're immediately shut down. But that was pretty cool how they shut down. They got all 33 Raptors running on the first stage. They shut it down to nothing but 3. Just to kind of keep it pointed in the right direction. If they just shut them all down, it might start to drift. And then the capsule lights up 6 rockets. And they were designed to pivot outward so that their flame went outside and not directly into the first stage. And there's a ring around them that the Russians have been using forever that allows that to come out. That was successful. One of the things that NASA and FAA were concerned about was their ability to blow up these. And to a degree, they answered that because the first stage, they had the same problem with the top part when they were taking off and then trying to come back and land. The fuel would slosh around, and for a moment they would be without fuel until they figured out a way to handle that. They haven't dealt with that apparently in the first stage, because when it turned around, the engine started shutting down and its fail-safe explosives blew up the first stage. And it was far enough away so it didn't cause a problem. The top part kept going. I'm struggling with names. My brain is just not connected right now for that. I should have written it down because I know I was going to talk about it, but I thought I'd remember. But in any case, the top part, which is the flying part, which will come back in and eventually land, it got out there and it started losing engines. Don't know what reason why. That's the first time they've ever done this part anyway. And it also had to be detonated by its automatic system. So it blew up as well. So it proved to the space folks that, yes, unlike the first one where they struggled for a little while to figure out how to make it blow up, they didn't have any problem on this second flight. And it looks like we might get another flight in December. We'll see. This was successful enough in getting out of harm's way for all the people on the Earth and the planets and the beetles that they might have to, deal with the noise. And we've upset a beetle, so therefore we can't go out into space anymore. They're playing these stupid games. But he's continuing to move forward. He's continuing to get help from agencies to move forward. Even the Wildlife Administration said it was okay. And they were bringing up all kinds of things that might just completely shut down space launches around the world if they got their wish. And they finally backed down. So anyhow, amazing technology. And of course you know that he has the Tesla, which he used to pay for all this. And it won't replace gas cars on the Earth. It can't. There's not enough electricity. And to go along with this Starlink, we stopped reading in Matthew, but let me pick up on Matthew 24:14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come. How can you preach around the world? There's areas that we haven't even fully been to. We've pretty much been on every place on the earth, but there are still places that if you go, it's so dangerous that they don't go very often. Whether it's the North or South Pole, whether it's South America, Africa, wherever it is, it's too dangerous to go to on a regular basis, but you can send a signal to the whole world. All right. We have for many years had space telescopes. Each generation is better than the next because we get better on technology. We started talking about them primarily with Hubble. And Hubble was around during the time of the space shuttle, and it had to have some maintenance done to it, and the space shuttle did the maintenance. They got alongside, they opened it up, they changed some stuff. They found out that they had a bad mirror that they didn't catch. Yeah, somebody caught it, and they kept it hidden because it was such a big deal. But they changed the electronics to basically ignore the bad part of the mirror. And so we got to see some of that. Well, the new one up there, the James Webb Space Telescope, which was launched in 2021, I think Hubble was around 1990. It is bringing back such clear, good pictures that it's beginning to tell the scientists that maybe you were wrong on some of your assertions, like the Big Bang. We don't understand this stuff out there. God does, because he created it. But we are still learning. And our telescopes are giving us the ability to see into what God created. It's amazing. I posted some pictures. All these things were put up there whenever God created it. Whether it's 6,000 years ago or 6 trillion years ago, it doesn't matter. From God's point of view, he did it, and that's the main thing. But he put stuff up there that we would get pictures of today that have been hidden for thousands of years, millions of years, whatever. So the more we learn, the more we learn we don't know. Give credit to God who was able to create all this stuff. And one last thing, just to kind of point to our times that we're in. I'm going to talk a little bit about Mars. SpaceX is also going to Mars. Their plan is they're not going as quick as we thought because we didn't realize just how inhabitable it was. But he's going to get there eventually. But Mars right now is the only planet that we know that's completely inhabited by robots. Now, they may be four-wheeled robots. We don't have a walking robot yet there, but they have the ability to send one. And I've seen the wheels on the current rovers that are running around, and they're beginning to break down. You're seeing pieces torn out of them from running on this very hard volcanic, for the most part, rock that they're on. They do have a helicopter. There's enough atmosphere. It's not a lot, but there's enough atmosphere that this little helicopter with the camera can go up and take pictures and do stuff. It's more of a proof of concept, but they're able to use it. And they have it kind of follow the rover along so they can jointly look at ways. Because the way it is, it's minutes away. If you want it to turn left, you have to tell it, a few minutes before, like, was it 7 minutes? Or is it longer than that? I forget. The bottom line is you're guiding a robot, excuse me, that's capable of running somewhat autonomously, but it's helpful if you give it help. And it's able to do what we tell it to do as long as we plan ahead. And there have been as many as 23 robots on Mars. Not all of them operated. Some of them crashed, but they made it there. Let's see, what are the names of the rovers? I've got them here someplace. Well, NASA launched most of them. There's one there from China. And they finally got smart from the first ones, and yet they had this in a movie. Was it Robinson Crusoe on Mars? He crash lands on Mars, and he can only communicate with Earth when the orbiting satellite comes around, a capsule that's going to take him back. When it comes around, then he can talk to Earth. He didn't have to transmit from Earth directly. That would be terrible. They did that in the movie. They only did that on the last rover, basically. It's like, come on, guys, you had this technology, and you didn't use it, and yet you had the idea years ago. So anyhow, they transmit to the satellite, which now is staying, more available, and then the satellite transmits it to Earth. So we got smart finally. But the reconnaissance rover and was launched, I think, in 2021, and the Mars rover, which landed about the same time. Jet Propulsion Laboratory was involved in most of these, and then China launched their Zhurong, and it landed, so they've got their own there. They're trying to catch up with us. They've got their own rocket now that turns around and lands like SpaceX. They're copying, yes, but if we stop, they will go past us. And they have the ability to launch nuclear weapons from there to the U.S. We've cut back on the number of ones that we can launch back, but we have submarines all over the place, but so do they. So anyhow, we are finding that as we get out into space, God is bigger and better than ever before, and that we're seeing a lot of these things for these end times take shape. The technology is carrying us into what the book of Revelation talked about. letting the whole world see the two witnesses. That couldn't happen 50 years ago. So we are in the end times. Be keeping your eyes out. We have currently one of our Revelation scholars is currently predicting that using the reverse date calculation, we could have, our rapture could be anywhere from November 30th to December 5th. If it's a 2027 return. Brenda Weltner, although has tried to predict, has stopped predicting. What she's got is a template. You plug the year end of the return, and then you back up all the other events. And we have timelines from that tell us when things are going to happen. Things are going to happen real fast towards the end. So fast that if you're fighting someone in a ring or whatever and you knock them down, if you don't let them get back up, you win. All right. And in wrestling, of course, if you pin them to the mat, you win. But the rules are now in boxing that you have to back up if he falls down to let him get back up. Otherwise, it'd be over. Okay. So we have a Rapture Watch coming up for the next couple of weeks. It doesn't matter when the date is. You should always be ready. Be smiling and helping people this time of year. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.